I want to look at one of the first texts that I studied in regards to the sacred name, and that's Exodus 3:13 through 15. Sometimes this text is used to teach that the sacred name was not known prior to the time of Moses. I will get to that in a later class, okay? For now, I just want to introduce you to the sacred name using this text because this was one of the first ones that was shown to me. This is direct from the WEB, the World English Bible, which, by the way, this is one of those English Bibles that uses the name Yahweh all through the Old Testament, every place that it's supposed to be used. The World English Bible is based on the 1901 American Standard Version. The 1901 ASV used the name Jehovah. The World English Bible has updated and I believe improved by using the name Yahweh. So let's read this, Exodus 3:13 through 15. I'm going to read it directly out of the WEB. Moses said to God, "Behold, when I come to the children of Israel and tell them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What should I tell them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am." And he said, "You shall tell the children of Israel this, I am has sent me to you." A lot of people stop there, especially in movies. But in verse 15, God said, "Moreover to Moses, you shall tell the children of Israel this, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, hath sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations." So when Moses asks the Almighty about his name, there's a reason he does that. The Almighty responds with, "I am who I am," or I believe that's better translated, and some Bibles do this, as "I will be who I will be." In Hebrew, that is the phrase Ehyeh, Asher Ehyeh. I will be who I will be, in verse 14. And then the actual name in verse 15. It's key here to recognize that the name is Yahweh in verse 15. This is my name forever. And I will be who I will be, or I am who I am, is actually a definition or a translation of the name Yahweh. I will be who I will be is what the name Yahweh means. So Yahweh's introducing himself with not just the name, but also what the name means or stands for. We'll talk more about this text later and in more detail, but I'm just laying some groundwork. The main point to notice here is in verse 15, the Creator says, "Yahweh, this is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations." The root word of memorial is the word memo. I want you to think about, we used to use those little sticky notes on the yellow notepad, and I'd write a note on it, or I've used them at work, write a note and stick it somewhere so I remember something. Now we put that in our phone, or we set alerts, or my wife says, "Siri, remind me at such and such a day." And, we make memos like that. I haven't gotten that far yet. I still write it out, even if I'm typing it out on my phone. This verse teaches us that Yahweh is the Creator's memo. It's his memorial. The HCSB, the Bible I use mostly, reads, "This is my name forever. This is how I am to be remembered in every generation." The NIV says, "This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation." And the Good News Translation, which I'm learning to love more and more, says, "This is my name forever. This is what all future generations are to call me." Why is Yahweh not his memorial today? There are more modern Christian songs that are beginning to use his name, but I'm afraid that it's more in a gimmick way than a serious way, because once that song is over and that's seen as a unique song because it uses the name Yahweh, they move on to singing to the Lord and to God and all this. And I think that all of our songs should praise Yahweh. Here in our congregation, we sing his name probably in just about every song that we sing, because we're memorializing him. We're remembering him by the name he asked us to remember him by. We also use it in prayer, Bible reading, teaching, and in everyday use. Some people say it's too holy to use in everyday speech. We will eventually learn, probably in the next lesson next month, that the reason stems from a Jewish tradition. And one understanding of that is that people began to think that the name was so holy and they didn't want to misuse it, so the best way to keep from misusing it was to not speak it at all. So therefore they wouldn't ever misuse it if they didn't use it. I think that's taking the Torah and putting this big fence around it, and through that tradition it's causing you to violate the commandment. We do not find anywhere in the Older Testament where any patriarch or prophet or prophetess felt that way. We don't find where anybody felt that the way that we can make sure we don't misuse it is by not speaking it. No, they all spoke it. One example, and I love this is the one I give for common everyday use, is in the book of Ruth. And this is when Boaz, who would eventually become Ruth's husband, he went out to meet his workers. Now, Boaz, he's the guy with the clipboard checking on everybody, like Brother TJ. He goes out to meet his workers. And Boaz says to his workers, his harvesters, he says, Yahweh be with you. And the workers respond and they say, Yahweh bless you. Why is this text important? It's because it shows us that use of the name Yahweh was an everyday use. The name was holy, it was hallowed, it was sacred, but it was to be used. That showed the holiness of the name, to use it, not just on Sabbath, not just on Day of Atonement, which was a later tradition, but an everyday use. Here are some scriptures that show the sacred name's importance. I try to communicate to people the importance of using the name of the Creator once they learn of it, because it brings Him honor and esteem. Every time we say Yahweh, we're proclaiming He is I will be who I will be. In other words, He's self-existent. He's the one that causes everything to be. Every time we speak Yahweh, we're proclaiming that. Here are three scriptures. For now, I'm going to limit it to three, and it was hard to pick just three. But these three show the importance of the sacred name. Psalm 102, verse 12, Lexham English Bible. But you, O Yahweh, abide forever, and your remembrance from generation to generation. That word remembrance there ties to Exodus 3:15, the memorial name. This is His remembrance. Psalm 135:13, Contemporary English Version. The name of Yahweh will be remembered forever, and He will be famous for all time to come. And then Hosea 12 verse 5 in the Good News Bible. This was Yahweh God Almighty. Yahweh is the name by which He is to be worshipped. We could go on and on with literally hundreds of verses that show the importance of the sacred name. But we'll move on. My next chart is going to talk about translation versus transliteration. Simplest way to explain this, hopefully you can remember this, is translation is meaning, transliteration is letters. For example, when you hear a news reporter speak the news in one language and they get to the name of a person or a place, they speak the name of that person or that place in its native language. I remember last year, I put this in my notes because this is what I remember. I remember last year when President Donald J. Trump was going to speak with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And I think I'm pronouncing that right. My point here is that the reporter does not give the leader of North Korea an English name when he's reporting on the news. He speaks his name in the Korean language. And the same goes, I looked this up, the same goes for when the reporter said Pyongyang and Ryongsong. Now, the Pyongyang and the Ryongsong residence is the place where Kim Jong-un lives. And when the reporter spoke the name of that place, he didn't go to the English rendition. The reporter, even though he probably butchered the name of the place and the name of the dictator or the ruler, he at least made an attempt to say it in the native language of those particular people. When we do this for proper names of people or proper names of places, it's called transliteration. Transliteration, letters, translation, meaning. Here's the definition of transliteration from Merriam-Webster's online dictionary. At the bottom it says, to represent or spell in the characters of another alphabet. Break down the word transliteration. The word trans carries the meaning of across, and literate comes from the Latin littera, which means a letter or a character. So it's taking the letters of a proper name in one language, the native language of the person or place, and bringing those letters across to another language. And what that does, when you do that, it causes a similar sound in both languages. And we do this for names. For instance, we say Abraham, and it's probably more correctly pronounced in Hebrew, Abraham. But if you look at the English rendition and the Hebrew, it's almost a one-to-one correspondence from Hebrew to English, because the letters of one language has been carried across to the letters of our English language. I mentioned before about my name. My parents named me Eric Matthew Jansen. They call me Matthew by my middle name. If I go to Russia, to China, to Japan, to Mexico, my name doesn't change. My name is still Matthew. Now, the speakers in those other countries may not pronounce my name exactly like my mama, and that's okay. But if they ask me what my name is, I tell them Matthew, and they call me the best that they know how. They call me by that name. I work for a lot of Asian people, have a lot of Asian customers, and they'll tell me their name, and I'll have to get them to tell me their name 3 or 4 times, because they have a different dialect. They speak different. They have different syllables, different pronunciations. But I always try my best to say somebody's name the best that I can say it, because that's their name, and I want to respect their name. I could be given an additional Chinese name or an additional Russian name, but those would be secondary to my original name. Talking about translation and transliteration, let me give you a couple of examples here on the screen. We're going to use 2 Hebrew names. The name on the left is the name Abraham, and the name on the right is the name Sarah. These are names in Hebrew, and remember, Hebrew is read from right to left. So both of these names, Abraham and Sarah, they're in Hebrew. Now we're going to give the English transliteration, remember letters, we're going to bring that down into English. Here, like for instance, we have in Hebrew for Abraham, we have that first letter is Aleph, and that goes to A, and then we have Beit to B, and then Resh to R, Hey to H, and Mem to M. So we bring all those letters down. We do the same thing with Sin to S, Resh to R, and Hey to H, from Hebrew to English. That's transliteration. And then when we get through, we reverse the letters, because English is from left to right, and we come up with, as the vowel points are added there in Hebrew, and we're not going to get to that right now, but we come up with Abraham and Sarah. So that's transliteration. And then translation, which is the meaning, is father of many for Abraham, and noblewoman for Sarah. So when somebody says, well, I know that that's the name in Hebrew, Yahweh, but we translate it into English, that's not really correct. If somebody tells you that, you need to explain to them that we don't translate names. The translation of my name, Matthew, is gift of Yah. Well, when I live my life in the community, nobody goes around calling me, hey, gift of Yah, gift of Yah. They call me Matthew, right? Because that's my name. So if we were going to translate Yahweh's name, it would be, I will be who I will be, or I am who I am. But we don't do that with names. We transliterate names. My next chart is going to talk about the names of false gods versus the name of the true mighty one. This is 2 Kings 17, 29 through 32. I'm reading out of the easy to read version. Let me just read this. 2 Kings 17, beginning at verse 29. It says, but all those people made gods of their own. They put them in the temples at the high places that the people of Samaria had made. They did this wherever they lived. The people of Babylon made the false god Sukkoth. I want you to listen to the names of these false gods. False god Sukkoth, Benoth. Sukkoth Benoth, that's one name. The people of Cuthah made the false god Nergal. The people of Hamath made the false god Ashima. The people of Ava made the false gods Nibhaz and Tartak. The people from Sepharvaim also burned their children in the fire to honor their false gods Adramelech and Anamelech. But they also worshipped the Lord. They chose priests for the high places from among the people. These priests made sacrifices for the people in the temples at those places of worship. Now, the context of this passage is people from foreign lands. They were moved to the land of Samaria. This is where we get the people, the Samaritan people. Remember the woman at the well? She was a Samaritan woman. This is the origination of the Samaritan peoples. It's when the Israelites from the northern kingdom, they were removed by Yahweh because of their rebellion. They were removed and scattered amongst the nations. A lot of them went to Assyria. And then some of the Assyrian peoples were placed in the land of Israel, which the capital city of the northern kingdom was Samaria. When they got there, they didn't know how to worship Yahweh. Eventually, there was a priest from the tribe of Levi that was sent there to teach them how to worship Yahweh. But if you read the whole text, it says that they worship Yahweh, but they still worship their false gods too. So it was kind of a syncretism there going on there. They would honor their false deities by name, and then they would honor Yahweh too. They would keep the statutes of the false deities and then honor Yahweh as well, which that's not the way to do it, but that's the way that these people were doing it. The point I want to bring out here is the names of the false deities are all transliterated from Hebrew into English. But when we get down to verse 32, the name of the one true mighty one is not transliterated. It's substituted with the word Lord. So it's even worse than the original people here worshiping their mighty ones and worshiping Yahweh. Our English translation is even worse because the false mighty ones, they get their names memorialized. They get their names retained here in the text of Scripture. But our Creator, the Mighty One of Israel, His name is completely removed, and we just see the word the Lord. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It would make a lot more sense to transliterate the name of Israel's Mighty One into English, just like they transliterated the name of the false mighty ones into English. Proper nouns are to be transliterated. Everyday words are to be translated. Before we go to this chart, anybody got any questions, comments? We good? Sister Lisa?
So Lord was not transliterated.
Mm-hmm.
It was translated.
Not exactly. It was substituted. Yeah.
It was substituted.
Yeah. So if they would have translated Yahweh's name, let's go back. If they would have translated Yahweh's name down here, they would not have put the Lord. They would have put something like I am or I will be. That would be a translation. Translation is meaning. And so the meaning of Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh is I am that I am, or I will be who I will be. So through the process of tradition, the sacred name is substituted here for Lord.
So transliteration
Mm-hmm.
from what was it translated from? What was that the Lord translated from?
Nothing. The original Hebrew, let me write it up here, the Hebrew read like this. That's Hebrew, and that would be, the English equivalent would be YHWH. Through the process of the traditions of men, the name YHWH was substituted for the Hebrew word Adonai. And Adonai in English is the Lord. So that's why the words the Lord are put here in verse 32. What doesn't make any sense here is that these learned translators of this Bible, when it comes to all the names of the false gods, they bring them from Hebrew into English exactly how they should. So Nibhaz, for example, right here, Nibhaz is brought from Hebrew, Nibhaz, into English as Nibhaz. Same thing with a Dramelech and an Amalek. But when we get to Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, they don't bring down his name in transliteration with the letters. They don't even translate the name as I am that I am. They substitute it
With a title.
With a title. Yeah. And I'm saying that that's not correct. And these translators know that that's not correct because they've done it with the names of the false gods. But the reason that they've put the Lord in stems from Jewish tradition instead of what the Scriptures actually say. Does that help answer the question there?
It did. I was just wondering so they just basically didn't, it's not translated at all. It's just, they substituted a title instead of his name.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And I believe that that's a transgression of the law to bring His name to nothingness. So, anybody else before we move on? Okay, so let's go more into titles versus names, and this will probably help answer as well. The English words God and Lord are titles for Yahweh, or Mighty One and Master. Those are synonyms. They're not proper names. We talked about how that, there are Lords many and Gods many. There's a House of Lords in Britain, or there's Dagon, the god of the Philistines, or Baal, the god of the Canaanites. But I want you to think of the words God and Lord like you would think of doctor. I've got one on the screen here. The word doctor, or the word lawyer, policeman, fireman, pastor, teacher. All of these words describe a position, but they don't make it clear of the particular name of the individual. So somebody might call me the septic tank man, or Brother Jerry might be called the carpenter. But if you want to get more technical and somebody says, well, which carpenter was it? I had 3 come out here and bid the job. They would say, well, it was Jerry Kendall. Or which septic tank man came out? Well, it was Matthew with Arnold Septic. See, when you begin to use proper names, you get more individualistic and you begin to identify particularly who you're talking about. So to just call the Creator God or Lord, those are words that can be applied to so many different beings and even different things. Deuteronomy 10 verse 17 is a good example of the difference here. This is reading out of the English Standard Version, and I've put the name Yahweh back where it belongs. It says, "For Yahweh your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God, who is not partial and takes no bribe." Notice those 2 phrases, God of gods and Lord of lords. He's the supreme God or mighty one out of all the other mighty ones, showing you that other mighty ones exist, whether they be in heaven or on earth, as 1 Corinthians say. And He's the supreme Lord or master of all the other lords or masters. The point here is that the title can be used for Yahweh and other beings, but the name can only be used for Yahweh, unique to Him. This next one is a quote from a book called Aid to Bible Understanding. I don't have this book, but I have a photocopy of this portion in my files at home. Aid to Bible Understanding is a book that was published back in the 60s or the 70s by the Jehovah's Witness organization. And a lot of people get turned off when you say Jehovah's Witness, but I don't. I think they're pretty good Bible students. I don't agree with them on everything, but and at least they do recognize that God has a name. They're real big on calling Him Jehovah, which I don't agree with that particular rendering of the sacred name, but at least they recognize that God and Lord are not His name, and Jehovah is a derivative of the Tetragrammaton of the name Yahweh, but it's not the original. Here, Aid to Bible Understanding, let me read it. This is from page 885 in this book. It says, "The title God or Lord, Father, or any other title is neither personal nor distinctive. One can make a God of his own belly." Philippians 3:19. In the Hebrew Scriptures, the same word Elohim, Elohim is the Hebrew word for God, is applied to Jehovah, the true God, and also to false gods, such as the Philistine god Dagon, and it gives the Scriptures, and the Assyrian god Nisroch, it gives the Scripture. For a Hebrew to tell a Philistine or an Assyrian that he worshipped God would obviously not have sufficed to identify the person to whom his worship went. Now I have here pictured in the background of the battle between David and Goliath. So Goliath was a Philistine giant, and one of the gods of the Philistines, one of the chief gods, was Dagon. And obviously David was an Israelite, so he worshipped Yahweh. Now, for David to approach Goliath and say, "I come to you in the name of Elohim," would not have been anything particular or specific for the Philistine giant to hear. The Philistines knew the Hebrew language just like the Israelites. And to say that you came in the name of Elohim The Philistine would say, which Elohim? We would say, which mighty one? It'd be like saying, I've come to you in the name of God. I've come to you in the name of the mighty one. Yeah. We would say, which one? Of course, we know that David did not say that. He said, you come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of Yahweh of hosts, or Yahweh of armies. In other words, the Yahweh of the armies of heaven. He's the ruler over the angelic host. And Goliath knew where David stood at. I've often made a running joke that when I'm talking with an individual and they say, God bless you, or the Lord bless you, I'll smile or shake their hand and say, which God? Or which Lord? And it kind of starts up a little conversation. And they say, oh, Matthew, you know what I'm talking about. And of course I do, but I just don't think it's sufficient to refer to the Creator with titles alone. There are cases in the Bible where He is referred to by titles, and that's fine. We can call Him the Mighty One, Elohim. We can call Him our Master, Adonai. We can call Him our Father. Yeshua taught us to pray, Our Father, which art in heaven. That's fine. But we are not to call Him titles to the neglect of using His name. The same prayer where we're taught to pray Our Father, He says the first thing, hallowed be Thy name, or sacred be Thy name. So Goliath knew exactly where David stood when David came to him. Now, that's the last slide that I have for today. Are there any final questions before we pray and kind of close out the study? Any comments or questions?